Hello and welcome to this revision video about Ozymandias, the poem by Percy Shelley. We'll be exploring various contextual points about this poem, helped by one of our resident history teachers. First of all, it's worth noting about the production of this poem. The poet Percy Shelley was inspired to write it after visiting the British Museum in London and seeing a statue of the pharaoh Ramesses II. The statue only included the top half of his body, and it led Shelley to wonder what happened to the bottom half. A bit more about Percy Shelley. He was also an atheist and also anti-monarchy. At the time, his extreme views made him become seen as a radical. Pharaohs were seen to have the power of gods, and I know that the history teacher will talk more about this in a moment. But in our poem, we can really see this hubris shine through in the words that he says on his pedestal. Some people also claim this poem was inspired by King George III, who was king at the time when Shelley wrote the poem, and was seen by many as a tyrant. He had ruled for a really long time, and lots of people thought that he was abusing his power among the society, but also by waging various wars that weren't coming back with much return financially for the country. There would have also been irony for those reading the poem at the time, because of course they knew what had happened to Ozymandias and his legacy. Shelley wrote it very soon after they had found this statue, and so it was fresh in the zeitgeist at the time. Now over to the history teacher, Mr. Cox, for more information about Ozymandias, the real pharaoh.
Hi guys, so I'm here to run you through the context of the Ozymandias poem. So Ozymandias is the Greek name of the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II, or Ramesses the Great. He ruled Egypt between 1279 and 1213, so BCE, so that's about kind of 3,000 years before kind of today, but also about kind of 1,000 years after the building of the pyramids in Egypt. Now, the statue that's referred to within the poem is actually one of two from the entrance to the Ramesseum, which was the mortuary temple of Ramesses II, so where his kind of embalmed body was left. And one of the statues can actually be seen today within the British Museum in London. And if you ever get a chance to go, there's big remix in there, and actually the size of it, you really get a really good impression of the size of it. Now, while he was buried in one of these Ramesseum, in one of these mortuary temples, they actually went out of fashion later, as did things such as the pyramids, because they were seen as kind of targets for grave robbers. So what you then get is somewhere called the Valley of the Kings, which is where lots and lots of pharaohs are buried, but also it was done in quite a secret environment, so it was more difficult for grave robbers to find and take kind of the rich stuff that they were buried with. Now, there are links between Ramesses and the gods. Ramesses means begotten by Ra, so basically the son of Ra. Now, Ra is the sun god and the king of the deities and father of creation. So one of the most important gods in ancient Egypt. Now, he could be seen as the physical sun himself. So Egyptians often believed that the sun in the sky was Ra himself, and often associated with Amun, who is another one of the creator gods. And we can see that in Testament with names such as Tutankhamun, who was a pharaoh who ruled Yater. Now, Ra as well was the patron of the sun. He was the patron of the heaven, kingship, and power. And actually, Egyptians had this real belief that kind of the afterlife was just as important, if not more important, than what came before. So what you quite often get is when particularly important people such as pharaohs were buried, they would have been buried with lots and lots of stuff to prepare them for the afterlife, and therefore associations with things such as gods such as Ra would really help cement that relationship. Now, taking this further, so Ramesses then a bit about his life. He lived until he was around 96 years old. He had over 200 wives or concubines. Okay, he had 96 sons and about 60 daughters with him, although he actually outlived most of these. Now, many felt then that the world would end when he died, and most archaeological sites in Egypt contain some mention of Ramses the Great. Such was the impression which he had on Egypt. I hope this is useful. I hope that gives you a bit of a background that you can that is useful for your exams. Best of luck. Bye.
Now let's try and link some of this contextual knowledge to the key quotes in the poem. First of all, the quote is King of Kings. Here we have repetition of king and also capitalization of the letter K to emphasize the character's arrogance and hubris. He was the longest reigning pharaoh and he did have a huge empire, so at the time the claim would have been credible. But as we've said earlier in the video, this is ironic given his current legacy and current reputation. The next quote is the hand that mocked them. This could be a reference to corporal punishment, which is when you hit someone or use physical force against someone as a sanction. And of course, tyrants in those times in ancient Egypt would have used these predominantly against slaves and those people that were perhaps building the pyramids for them or building the statue, in fact. He could well have been beating them and accusing them of doing a bad job of it, and maybe that's why it fell down so much. Lastly, the quote, nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Referencing Mr. Cox's video on the previous section of the video, this could be a reference to the fact that they stopped building resting places for pharaohs in that area because of grave robbers, and actually it would have been completely empty in that area. But of course it is also symbolic that no one visits his statue. He has been utterly forgotten. Nowadays, if you go to the Valley of the Kings in ancient Egypt, you will find crowds and crowds of tourists, but in those times no one bothered to go see Ozymandias' statue for various reasons, I should think, but namely because no one cared. If you'd like to find out more, I've got 3 links on the slide. The first one is a very recent discovery of another statue of Ramses II that was actually found in a slum in Egypt, which again is highly ironic. And then the next 2 are more information about Percy Shelley and his extreme views about politics, religion, etc. Thanks for watching, and please make sure to like and subscribe.